This is brought to you by the Centre for Governance, Leadership and Global Responsibility from Leeds Beckett University. And this series of videos is all about the nature of leadership. The whole point of having several different videos is to try and find what the different approaches are to leadership, to actually begin to develop some kind of dialogue and so begin to learn from each of the different sectors and each of the different styles. You'll see how leadership can be worked out in practice, because we'll both be having academics but also key practitioners in their areas.
Hello again, this is another video interview we're running for the Center of Governance, Leadership and Global Responsibility. This is the Leading 360. This is interviews that we're running to promote the dialogue, to understand more about leadership, about governance, about the responsibility, ethics and any other issues around leadership. If you have any questions or if you want to get in touch with us, please, you can email us and one of us in the center will return to you. So today we got a very special guest here, Dean Fathers, and I'm going to ask him, welcome to the interview. I'm going to ask him to introduce himself to us. Who is Dean Fathers?
Okay, thank you for inviting me. Dean Fathers, I've got a portfolio career really, so wear many different hats. I've got a substantial role within the NHS in that I'm chairman of Nottinghamshire Healthcare, and I'm also vice chair of the Mental Health Network for the NHS Confederation, and have the responsibility for supporting a variety of different national initiatives within the NHS as well, such as the Workforce Race Equality Standard, which is important to me as well. But my portfolio takes me into the private sector, so I have a couple of non-executive directorships with private organisations, and I also support an academic interest as well with the university here. Okay.
Let's start with the private sector and public sector. What can we learn from leadership? What do you bring from the private sector into the public sector? So what is the differences there are in the private sector, working in both sectors? Can the public sector learn from leadership within the private sector?
I think it's an interesting question in that leadership is fundamentally the same regardless of where you are, whether you're in the private sector or the public sector. Dealing with people, making sure that you've got a good understanding of what people require from you is actually essential. Getting to understand yourself as an individual, getting to understand what your roles and your responsibilities are, getting to understand yourself as part of a team, and understanding how all those three things orientate is essentially the same whether you're in the private sector or the commercial sector. The only difference is the end outcome. So the outcomes are different, and therefore people have a perception that maybe leadership should be different. But in my mind, they're not.
They're the same. Just recently, we attended one of your lectures. I think it was your inaugural lecture here at the university, and there were some very interesting points about the NHS. Also about customer satisfaction. You know, what we need to really be focusing on is the end user. So how leadership translate? How can we bring that journey from leadership within such a huge organization into customer satisfaction, that you go through different layers of people and management? It's such a huge organization. Yeah. How can leadership within the NHS be translated into customer satisfaction?
I think there are two really important ingredients based upon the premise that everybody is in the NHS for the same purpose. You know, I'm here to add years to life and life to years. And therefore, regardless of the organisational structure around me, that's my common purpose. And of course, I also share with my colleagues a set of common values. And in my own particular trust, what we've done is we've emphasised very strongly how those values put the individual person at the centre of everything that we do. So by being positive about what the individual needs, we're able to align all of our resources and actually ensure that we give them the excellent outcome that they desire.
And we're reading the media, we're saying there's a lot happening within the NHS, there's some crisis. You mentioned some of it in your inaugural lecture also. Is leadership within the NHS doing enough to change the situation, or it is not a leadership issue, it's more a political issue? How do you see this situation that we're living now within the NHS? Is it more administrative problems or leadership, or is it more political? What it is? What is it?
I think what I don't want to do is get the two confused and conflated.
Okay.
I mean, our purpose drives what we're going to try and do. And if you actually think about that purpose, you know, there are 4 essential steps in the journey. So we need to bring people into the world well, and therefore how do we make sure that we actually do that? We need to make sure that once they're in the world well, they live as long a happy and healthy life as they possibly can have. And if we can't enable them to live forever, which is an aspiration but not a reality, then when it comes to their time of illness, we help them to recover as best we can. And if they can't recover, then we hope that we will help them to live with dignity or to die with dignity.
In your trust particularly, we have the integrated health. Can you explain a little bit what is that?
Well, integrated health is recognising that historically the health system has built silos and functional structures. And what we want to try to do is actually break down those barriers. So by putting the individual patient, the service user and their carers around those individuals at the centre of all of our thinking, we then start to move our services around them, not them moved around our services. So integration is making sure that we remove the waste, remove the barriers, remove the issues and blockages that prevent them from getting the best outcome they possibly can. And what my trust has done is it's brought mental and physical health together, because the two actually are able to create better prevention and better recovery, and therefore achieve better outcomes.
Is it the only one in the country doing
No,
that?
it's a theme that's running right the way throughout many parts of the health service, and it's not just within the NHS per se. So we're actually working now more in a systems approach. So with other providers, with other service organisations in the third sector, for instance, but also in the wider community and in social care as well, which plays an important part of us as we are humans that aren't divided into those small silo blocks.
For our viewers now, you are chairing different organisations. Can you explain to all of us and our viewers what is the role of a chair, and why chairing so many different organisations? How can you divide that? And one of your passions is also board performance. So can you explain a little bit about the dynamics of a board and chairing different organisations at the same time?
Yeah, I think a chair must be differentiated from a chief executive, and one of the very first things that a chair needs to do whenever she or he meets with their chief exec is go through a my job, your job, our job kind of discussion. Essentially, the role of the chair is to ensure that the board is effective at providing the right governance structure, that the board is able to think with strategic foresight, to make sure that the board is applying policy appropriately, and then using the chief executive and the executive function to implement set strategy, and then holding those individuals to account appropriately on behalf of the key stakeholders. So a key part of the role of a chair is actually knowing who the stakeholders are for every organisation. In terms of running a portfolio, one of the big advantages of having a portfolio is the learning application. So every time you do something within one organisation, the learning opportunity is able to be applied across all of the parts of your portfolio. And because of the fact that what I do is all aligned around the governance space, what I'm able to do is actually get a real positive synergy from combining all of the different features of what I do. And then in terms of implementation, what we're able to do is actually make sure that through getting that best practice put into every organisation, we can deliver long-term sustainable success and prosperity for each of those organisations.
Okay, thank you. Now, you started working with us as a visiting professor. So what could we expect from you? What is the kind of work you're going to be doing within the university? I mean, I was there during the inaugural lecture and it was really a great time. We learned a lot. But also, we're starting to get involved with IGA. Can you explain a little bit about your involvement with us and what IGA is and what we can expect from you?
Well, in a previous role, one of the things that happened in my life was I was asked to review governance and present a paper to the King's Fund around leadership and governance in a whole systems kind of perspective. And at the conference, it became very transparent from all of those people that were contributing is that whilst there is considerable evidence about how poor governance results in poor outcomes, there was at that stage very little evidence about how good governance resulted in good, long-term, sustainable, positive outcomes. And so a group of us got together to actually consider what tool we could develop to enable us to find out what good governance looks like, and having collected that evidence, then how could you actually demonstrate for the benefit of others how they could take that good governance to develop longer term success and prosperity. So that's kind of how it all started. And from that initiative, the European governance model was kind of born. And IGA's role as an entity is to look after the European governance model and to use it as a tool for exploring how practice can inform better theory, as opposed to how theory can inform better practice, and then loop that process round in a business school so that we've got a continuous learning environment.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. When are we starting? Have we started already?
Yes, we've started to explore whether it can be used in a variety of different ways. So as a self-assessment tool, it's a fantastic mechanism to help organisations who need to consider their governance processes to go on a learning journey. So that's a good start, and we're going to create an advisory group from large employers within the local region to get them engaged in taking the concepts further forward. We've also started to talk to a variety of different organisations about how we can use it as a peer assessment tool. So how tools within one organisation can be identified, translated, transferred, and then used in other parts of another organisation to actually help to share that learning and spread that best practice.
So that is any sector or any size companies, or?
I mean, the tool was designed quite specifically to go across all organisational types and sizes, but also the advantage of the European governance model is it can work in any jurisdiction. So it can work in Copenhagen just as equally as it can work in Paris or Edinburgh.
Okay, that's very interesting, Dean. We're looking forward to seeing this within the organisation, within the university, and how we can actually help to improve companies and businesses, organisations in our region. Now we're coming towards the end of the interview. We would like to ask you to leave a message or an advice to students, to academics, people involved in leadership, or people starting being leaders. Given the wealth of experience you've got in leadership and governance, and what would you leave as a message to our audience, to viewers? Okay.
I guess one of the things that I would leave is a self-revelation that experience is about making mistakes, is about learning about yourself and being open to continuous feedback and new learning. So, I suspect I'm only qualified to do half the jobs that I do because I've made all of the mistakes that it's possible to make, and Therefore, I can translate that to the benefit of others so that they don't have to make them as well. So first of all, recognise that as a leader you're on a learning journey, that you're never ever capable, you're always learning to be somebody that's better, and therefore development must be key to everything you do. Learn about yourself more and more, because if you can't lead yourself, if you can't understand yourself, it's very difficult for others then to be led by you or to understand you. And therefore my kind of ingredient for success would be start with yourself and learn.
Okay, thank you very much, Dean. Thank you for your time. Thank you for watching us, guys, and I hope you have enjoyed. If you have any comment, please leave a comment on the channel, on our channel, or email us. Thank you very much.